Hello and welcome to another episode, the final one for season 1 of Coffee with SamPaul. I'm of course this host, SamPaul. Today we're very blessed to be speaking with Georgia from Grow SA. How you going? How you going, Georgia?
I'm great, thanks. How are you, SamPaul?
Very, very good, thanks. One thing I've been meaning to do just before we get into it, and I just thought of this today, but I should have done on every episode, is to ask what people drink, because you know, like everyone that I've interviewed pretty much has different coffee, and yours is particularly interesting. So what are you drinking today?
So I'm actually drinking a matcha latte.
Matcha latte.
I believe that it's a Japanese green tea,
Okay.
but it's ground up into a powder form.
Okay.
It does have a bit of caffeine in it, but it's just less caffeine than
Less,
coffee.
yeah. I think tea generally does, doesn't it? Have less,
Yeah.
Although I didn't know green tea had caffeine. So
Yeah, just really enough a day.
there's my lesson of the day.
There you go.
So, as I mentioned in the introduction, you do work for Grow SA. What is your role at Grow SA?
So when I started back in the beginning of 2020, my role initially was youth project officer.
Yep.
The title itself has now been changed to youth program worker, but that was basically me going into schools and running wellbeing programs.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I've actually had some indirect experience with those sort of programs with my son.
Oh,
Yeah, he's done a few wellbeing programs through his school, and that I have to say, at the time was fantastic. He was sort of, I think, struggling a little bit. He'd come to the age where, like, he'd started to understand a little better about the fact that mum and dad weren't together anymore. Because when we first split, he was very young and didn't really understand, and it sort of seemed to affect him. And neither me nor his mum, despite our best efforts, really knew how to handle it. So very grateful for those kind of programs that you guys are doing. It's really awesome. And like wellbeing and mental health, as we're discussing before, off camera, such important things in the world today, and definitely have become something that's quite prevalent. Who are struggling with mental health issues and things like that. So it's really great to see you guys getting into that at the school level.
100%. Yeah, thank you. It's a really positive thing.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a big believer in tackling problems at that root level. Kind of, when people are kids, like when you see in past, sometimes schools will not deal with issues with the child, and then ultimately what ends up happening is they go on to bigger and better things that end up costing more to rectify or attempt to rectify. So you get in there when they're young, when they're still kind of learning everything pretty much. You can really tackle them head on.
Exactly. So the program itself is like a 10-week program, so I go in for a term at a time.
Yep.
I work in lots of different schools, so it's really great because we can reach as many kids as possible, both primary and high schools as well.
That's awesome.
So I've worked in a number of schools with my time at Grow. But so that's kind of how it all started, but there are heaps of different programs at Grow, and I now have a lot more to do with the different programs that we offer as well.
Okay, what are some of those other programs you've got?
So Grow itself is a peer support program, and it started up in Sydney in about 1957, I think.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so it's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And basically it's peer support, so it's people coming together. They have a weekly meeting that goes for roughly about 2 hours, and within the meeting they try and solve problems, they talk about problems, they support one another.
Oh wow,
it's all
that's awesome.
about connecting with people, having a sense of community.
Preach. Not preach, but you know what I mean. Like that's such a great thing to hear. Because one of the things I've noticed in my life and friends' lives is that despite this sort of belief that we're so well connected now with internet and Facebook and social media in general and things like that, I feel like we are, as a society, generally speaking, are so much more disconnected.
I agree.
It's just, and so it's good to see people getting back together and kind of really reinstigating that true connection, face to face, in groups, the way it should be. And that became particularly highlighted, I think, through the whole pandemic. We were basically forced apart.
That's right. And that's one of the positive things that came about through the pandemic, I guess, for Grow, was that there was a real need to still have that connection. And obviously we had to isolate and couldn't leave our homes for a long time. So we actually put together e-grow groups. So that's like grow groups that are held online. So they kind of existed, but they weren't as much a thing. But since then, it's really ramped up.
That's awesome. That's truly harnessing technology in a positive way, isn't it? Really.
For sure.
So What sort of qualifications would one need to kind of pursue something sort of like what you yourself or the other Grow members do? Like,
yeah, so do you mean like colleagues and staff members? Yeah. So,
or more specifically yourself, because obviously that's who I'm talking to. But just curious to know if someone wanted to say pursue something like what you do, what would be a good sort of pathway, I guess?
Well, it's really cool. We all come from different backgrounds and we all have a huge range of experiences. I know that some people have come through the program and have ended up being staff members simply through volunteering through Grow or attending Grow groups.
Oh, fantastic.
And that's what we call them, Grow groups.
I love it.
And so they may have been attending for a while and they get to understand the program and how it all works, and maybe they might take on a little bit more leadership.
Wow, that's awesome.
Myself, I did a couple of years of education at uni. Never finished my degree. Went travelling the world, did lots of different things.
Hey, that's education itself, isn't it? Really,
the best education.
I'm guessing though, with the work you do in schools, you'd need like things like working with children circle and things like that, police track and that.
Absolutely. So I had those 2 years to back me up, and then I also did a diploma of counselling. So all of those things kind of melded into what I do now. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, really grateful to be in the position that I am.
No, most definitely. Like my first introduction to Grow was actually through the same way that we met. Essentially, was through the Red Faces shows, as you'd be well aware. Georgia was actually a performer in this year's Red Faces at the Arkabar, which was awesome. Her and her partner did a really cool song, and it was just amazing. And I mean, everyone on the night just killed it. It was such a good night. But yeah, sucks you. Okay, I did perform. I was a little bit disappointed though, because like we had 5 judges, and for different reasons we had probably less performers this year than we normally do in the competition. But yeah, so that's how I became aware of who Grow was, and I've been a big supporter of what you guys do ever since that day, because as we've already said, mental health and support for those sort of areas of our lives are vital just to survive these days. And when I saw what Brenton and Millen were doing with Red Faces to raise money with Grow SA for your program, and that it's just like, wow, this is so good. It's like really organic way of doing it, because everyone that goes knows why they're there, and everything they spend on the auctions and on the tickets and everything like that is all, they know it all goes exactly where it needs to go, which is just great. Like, it's just fantastic. So I really applaud you guys for doing what you do, and everyone that gets involved with Red Faces to help raise money for that.
Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. And I do remember, I wanted to ask a little bit about, I think it was the lady from the government that came and spoke, but she mentioned there was a program I believe you guys were running, which the money was going this year directly towards. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So in fact, that's actually the role that I mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't tell you what it was called. So it's actually called Get Growing.
Get Growing, that's right.
And so I could tell you a little bit about how it actually works.
Yeah.
So basically what happens is I can work in a school, whether it's in year 5 class or year 12. So I work with anyone between, I think, 11 and 17.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good ages.
Yeah, exactly. And so usually what happens is I contact schools in the local area and I explain about Get Growing, and I explain what it is that we do, and then they might show a bit of interest, so I'll go in and meet them.
Wow.
And then if they decide that they'd like to have the program run, I put the steps in place to have everything organised. And basically what happens is I go into a particular school once a week. The session runs for about an hour, and each time I go there we learn about a different topic. So it's all about social skills, resilience, problem solving, safety, all these really important things to be learning from a young age.
Definitely.
And I think, in fact, the reason why Get Growing was put together is because adults who were going to grow groups, they were saying, gosh, I wish I had something like this when I was a kid, because I wouldn't have ended up so unwell as an adult if I had have known how to deal with these problems.
Yeah, right. And that comes back to what we mentioned earlier about tackling it at the at the root level, so to speak, as opposed to kind of these adults having to deal with it when they're older and potentially, like they said, more unwell, which is that's fantastic. That's really cool.
It's really inspiring as well, because so say in the beginning of the the 10 weeks, some of the kids might present really shy, lacking confidence, and they might not even know the other kids in the group. They'll probably usually, but sometimes they're not very familiar with some of the members.
Sure.
And anyway, as the weeks go by and they build that rapport, it's just beautiful to see the connections that are made and the support that they give one another, because it is essentially a peer support group that is from school, and they're learning these awesome skills together. By the end of the 10 weeks as well, they get to share, what has stood out for them, what's helped them, and it's really inspiring to see how much it does.
And you know what? Feedback from kids is always so valuable, because they don't kind of, not that they don't care about how they make you feel, but they don't hold back. They are very honest, and they're very literal, and they tell you straight up. So you're getting instant kind of feedback on where it's working best, and where maybe isn't maybe quite hitting the mark or something. So you're kind of able to constantly update and rejig things to make sure that you're hitting the mark and hitting the targets. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Getting a bit sort of emotional. This is very close to my heart.
Some of the feedback that I get from kids, like something as simple as "I love myself more."
Wow, that is huge. That is huge. I've actually been reading a book by Louise Hay called Mirror Work.
Oh, I know Louise Hay.
Yeah, and this particular book, because I believe she's got a few, this one in particular, it really delves into reconnecting with your inner child, and from there learning to love yourself, and to say that you love yourself, and not just be embarrassed to say it, because it is, we've been conditioned, I think, particularly in my generation, where the idea of loving yourself comes across like you're arrogant or that kind of thing. And it's really great that you're getting that kind of feedback from these kids, because if they learn to love themselves at that age, they're not going to go through a lot of the, because a lot of the things we tackle in life, particularly like with relationships with our parents and our friends and our family, it all comes down to how much we love ourselves. If we don't love ourselves, we tend to, from my experience, we tend to overcompensate by over-loving other people and giving other people, which then in turn we compromise ourselves. We don't have those boundaries maybe that we need to have to make sure that we're healthy ourselves, and we give so much to others. But if you love yourself, then you know where those boundaries are, that you can still love other people, but you always make sure that you're well first, because as the saying goes, you can't fill someone else's cup when yours is empty.
That's right.
That's awesome. Like I'm glad to hear that kids are getting that out of it. That's just that's awesome.
And if there's any other thing that I can pass on about what I've observed to be important, it's actually communication. It's okay to have problems or to have a worry. And I think a lot of the time we might bottle things up and not share what's on our mind. That can actually make us sick. So the more we learn that it's okay to share, and obviously with people that we feel safe with, then it's just a really valuable thing to learn. And if you can learn it from a young age to communicate and talk,
fundamental skills right there. That's brilliant. I love that. No, it's weird. Like, as I said to you before, like, it's just so weird. Like how, I set out the original idea for this show was just to basically talk to creative people, painters, musicians, artists of any kind, poets, whatever, anyone that sort of put out creative works. But then slowly, as it has kicked off, I've had people approach me that don't quite kind of fit in that category. But I thought, you know what? Let's do it anyway, because I'm sure that everyone has something to share that's going to bring value to someone else's life, and there's been this underlying theme that I think almost every episode we've spoken, at least touched on mental health and how important it is to communicate and to love yourself and be aware of all these things that basically make us a healthier, happier person, which then obviously makes us better for our friends and family as well. So
totally right.
Yeah, and I feel like kind of this, although this is the last episode of the season, it's almost like the fundamental in a sense, because that's exactly what you guys are doing, whereas other people have mentioned it kind of as an offshoot to what they do. But this is sort of talking about starting with that and running with that. It's great.
Yeah, that's right. That's our focus.
Focus, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, oh, cool, good.
That's funny. Thank you so much, Georgia, for coming and talking to me on Coffee with SamPaul. It's been really great, having a chat and a conversation. It's not an interview; it's a conversation. Shout out to Troy. Thank you so much, and of course, thank you again to Front Page for hosting us. They've been very, very hospitable for since I kicked off this show. Even before I hadn't done one episode, they were more than happy for me to come and shoot here. So, and if you've got a cafe and you want us to come and have a chat in your cafe, by all means get in touch with me at sampaulofficial@gmail.com. I'll put that link in the YouTube links as well, because if I can support and shed light on your cafe or your business, as well as chatting to really cool people like Georgia, then even better. It's all love. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And thank you to Shane. I didn't mention it in my last episode, but Shane, the cups, legend.
They're awesome.
All right.